"Excuse me, sir, is there a problem here?" The voice, sharp and laced with impatience, cut through the low hum of the grand, majestic hotel lobby. Captain Kyle Evans, his Marine Corps dress blues, a symphony of midnight blue and scarlet, stood within postures so rigid it seemed carved from stone. His medals, a neat, colorful block on his chest, gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. Flanked by two younger Marines who mirrored his ramrod stillness, he directed his question at the old man standing before the check-in desk. James O'Donnell, 86 years old, did not turn immediately. He seemed to be listening to a sound only he could hear, a distant echo from another time. He wore simple khaki pants and a worn leather jacket, the kind that had molded itself to its owner over decades of use. His granddaughter, Lily, a young woman in her early 20s, placed a protective hand on his arm. "No, Captain, no problem at all," she said, her voice bright but strained. "We're just checking in. My grandfather was invited to the ball tonight." Captain Evans's gaze drifted from James's weathered face down to the faded leather of his jacket, lingering on a small circular patch on the sleeve. It was so frayed that the image on it was nearly indecipherable. A faint smirk touched the captain's lips. "Invited? This is the Marine Corps birthday ball, miss. It's for active duty personnel, esteemed veterans, and their registered guests. We need to keep the entrance clear." He spoke with the clipped, condescending patience of someone explaining a simple concept to a child. James finally turned, his eyes a pale, clear blue, meeting the captain's. They were calm, observant, and held a depth that seemed to absorb the lobby's harsh light without reflecting any of it. He said nothing. His silence was a stark contrast to the captain's crisp exuberance. It seemed to irritate Evans, who saw it not as dignity, but as the slow confusion of old age. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some form of identification. And your invitation," Evans demanded, his voice hardening. The two junior Marines shifted their weight, their own discomfort a subtle ripple in their perfect formations. "Of course," Lily said, fumbling in her purse. "I have it right here. His name is James O'Donnell. He was a guest of General Morrison." The mention of the base commander's name gave Evans a moment's pause, but his arrogance quickly reasserted itself. He took the invitation she offered and barely glanced at it. "O'Donnell," he repeated, tasting the name and finding it unremarkable. "I don't recall that name from the general's list." He was lying, but his authority was the only truth that mattered in that moment. A small crowd had begun to form. Guests in their evening gowns and dress uniforms paused on their way to the ballroom, their curiosity piqued by the confrontation. The tension in the lobby became a palpable thing, a tightening in the air. The hushed whispers were like the rustling of dry leaves, drawing more and more attention. James remained still, his hand resting lightly on the check-in counter, his presence a quiet island in a sea of escalating hostility. Evans pressed on, emboldened by the audience. He saw an old man out of place, a relic cluttering up the polished grandeur of his modern Marine Corps. "What was your unit, Mr. O'Donnell? Did you serve at the Chosen Reservoir? I'm sure you have plenty of stories. Maybe you can tell them somewhere else." The insult was subtle, a dismissal of his entire life experience wrapped in a veneer of polite suggestion. Lily's face flushed with anger. "My grandfather served. He has every right to be here." "Everyone served," Miss Evans countered, his voice smooth as glass. "But this event is for a specific caliber of service member. We can't just have anyone wandering in off the street claiming to be a war hero." He gestured dismissively at James's jacket. "No uniform, no cover, no identification. For all I know, this is just an act." The humiliation was a physical force pressing in on Lily, making it hard to breathe. Yet James seemed unaffected. His gaze had drifted past the captain toward the large windows overlooking the city street. It was as if this entire scene, this public shaming, was a minor distraction, a buzzing fly in a room full of memories. This quiet detachment infuriated Evans more than any argument could have. He wanted a reaction. He needed to prove his dominance. He took a step closer, invading James's personal space. His voice dropped to a low, menacing tone.
I'm trying to be respectful, old man, but my patience is wearing thin. You and your granddaughter need to leave this hotel now." He reached out and tapped the faded patch on James's sleeve with a dismissive finger. "What is this thing even supposed to be? A souvenir from a gift shop?"
The moment his finger touched the worn threads, the sterile air of the hotel lobby dissolved. For a split second, the scene shattered, replaced by a flash of visceral sensory memory. It wasn't a story, it was a feeling. The deafening roar of helicopter rotors beating the humid jungle air into submission, the acrid smell of jet fuel and damp earth, the sight of that same patch, brand new and starkly defined, stitched onto the side of a Huey gunship. It showed a coiled serpent, fangs bared, wrapped around a jagged lightning bolt. The image was charged with a kinetic energy, a promise of sudden, violent action. Then, just as quickly as it came, it was gone. The scene snapped back to the polished marble floors and the silent watching crowd. Captain Evans saw none of it. He only saw the faded, meaningless patch in the old man's placid face. The disconnect between the lobby's reality and the patch's hidden history was a chasm only James could perceive. Across the lobby, leaning against a pillar, stood Gunnery Sergeant Miller. He was a man in his late 50s, retired from the Corps, but working a second career as the hotel's head of security. He'd seen the entire exchange, and a slow burn of disgust had been building in his gut. He recognized the type. Captain Evans was a spit-shined product of the modern peacetime military, all policy and protocol, with no understanding of the unwritten codes of honor that truly held the institution together. He saw the way Evans postured, the way he used his rank as a cudgel against a civilian, and it made him sick. More than that, he recognized the look in the old man's eyes. It was a look he'd seen in the grizzled faces of the legends who had trained him at Paris Island. A quiet, settled stillness that had been forged in crucibles Evans couldn't even imagine. Miller tried to intervene once, stepping forward and clearing his throat. "Captain," he said, his voice a low rumble, "everything all right here? The general is expecting Mr. O'Donnell." Evans shot him, a look of pure venom. "I have this under control, Sergeant. Return to your post." The use of his old rank was a deliberate power play, a reminder that even in civilian life, Evans was superior. Miller's jaw tightened. He knew that arguing further would only make things worse for the old man. Evans was on a power trip, and he wouldn't be denied his climax. He was about to cross a line, about to physically put his hands on the veteran or have him forcibly removed. Miller had seen it coming from the moment the captain opened his mouth. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to James, a silent message of solidarity, before retreating back to the shadows near the hotel's administrative offices. He didn't reach for his radio to call his own security team. This was above their pay grade. This required a different kind of authority. He pulled out his personal cell phone, his thumb moving quickly over the screen. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years, a direct line he'd been given by the general's aide for emergencies. The call was answered on the second ring. "Colonel Henderson?" The voice was brisk, busy. "Colonel, this is Gunny Miller at the Grand Majestic," Miller said, keeping his voice low and urgent, his back to the unfolding drama. "Sir, you need to get down to the lobby right now." "I'm on my way to the ballroom, Gunny. What is it?" the colonel asked, a hint of annoyance in his tone. "There's an incident, sir. Captain Evans is confronting one of the general's guests, an elderly gentleman. He's making a scene." "Evans? Damn it," the colonel sighed. "All right, I'll handle it. Who was the guest?" Miller took a deep breath. "His name is James O'Donnell, sir." There was a pause on the other end of the line. The silence stretched, heavy and profound. The colonel's entire demeanor seemed to shift, transmitted through the phone line as a sudden, sharp intake of air. Inside his temporary command office on the hotel's top floor, Colonel Henderson stood frozen, the phone pressed to his ear. The name echoed in the quiet room, stripping away the trivialities of the evening schedule. James O'Donnell. It wasn't a name he expected to hear tonight or ever. "Gunny," the colonel's voice was tight, strained, all previous annoyance vaporized and replaced by a chilling urgency. "Did you say James O'Donnell?" "Yes, sir. That's the name he gave," Miller confirmed from the lobby. Henderson dropped the phone into its cradle without another word. He lunged toward his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up a deeply encrypted limited-access database. He typed in the name. A single, sparse file appeared on the screen, flagged with the highest security clearance. Most of it was redacted, black lines obscuring decades of history, but one line under designation was starkly clear: Project Viper. Henderson felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He grabbed his desk phone and slammed the direct connect button to the hotel suite where General Morrison was dressing for the ball. "Sir," he said, dispensing with all pleasantries, "you need to come to the lobby immediately." "What is it, Henderson? Can it wait?" The general's gruff voice answered. "No, sir. It's James O'Donnell. Captain Evans. He's detaining him in the main lobby." The silence on the general's end was even more profound than the colonel's had been. It was the silence of a man confronting a ghost. "Get my security detail," the general commanded, his voice now a low, dangerous growl. "Tell them to meet me at the service elevator in 2 minutes. And Colonel, you tell Evans not to lay a hand on him. Tell him if he so much as breathes on that man wrong, I will personally end his career. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," Henderson said, but the line was already dead. He scrambled for his own cover and jacket, shouting for his aide. "Get the sergeant major. Tell him it's about Iron Viper." Back in the lobby, Captain Evans was basking in his perceived victory. The crowd was silent, James O'Donnell was silent, and the granddaughter looked to be on the verge of tears. He had successfully imposed his will. All that was left was the final dismissive flick of his wrist to cast them out. He leaned in close to James, his voice a mocking whisper for all to hear. "Look, old man, this has gone on long enough. You've had your fun. You want to play soldier? Fine." He straightened up, a cruel, self-satisfied smile spreading across his face. He was about to deliver the punchline to a joke only he understood. "Tell you what," Evans said, his voice ringing with condescension. "Every real warrior has a call sign. What was yours, huh? Let me guess, Pops. Old-timer? Grandpa?" He chuckled, and the two Marines behind him shifted uncomfortably, the humor of the situation lost on them. Lily opened her mouth to speak, to scream, to do anything to end this, but James finally moved. He raised a hand, not to strike, but to gently silence her. He then lifted his head, and for the first time, his pale blue eyes focused entirely on Captain Evans. The placid calm was gone, replaced by something ancient and hard. When he spoke, his voice was not the weak rasp of an old man. It was quiet, but it was rough, like stones grinding together. It was a voice that had given commands in the screaming chaos of battle and had been obeyed without question. "My call sign," James O'Donnell said, the words falling into the dead silent lobby like chips of ice, "was Iron Viper." Just as the last syllable left his lips, the grand double doors of the hotel burst open. They didn't swing gently. They were thrown wide with a disciplined force that commanded the attention of every person in the room. A wave of palpable authority washed into the lobby. It wasn't hotel security. It wasn't the police. General Morrison, a 2-star general whose face was known to every Marine in the command, strode into the lobby. His dress blues were immaculate, his chest a formidable fortress of ribbons and medals earned over 35 years of service. He was flanked by his sergeant major, a man whose face seemed to be hewn from granite, and a security detail of 4 Marines in their best uniforms, moving with the fluid, dangerous grace of professionals. The lobby, which had been merely quiet, was now plunged into a tomb-like silence. The air crackled. Every guest, every Marine, every staff member snapped to a silent, unseen position of attention. Captain Evans froze, his smirk vanished, his face instantly draining of all color, leaving behind a pasty, sickly white. His mind struggled to process what was happening. The general was supposed to be upstairs, preparing to be the guest of honor. Instead, he was here, moving across the marble floor with the focused intensity of a missile homing on its target. But the general did not look at Captain Evans. He didn't acknowledge the crowd. He didn't even seem to notice he was in a hotel. His eyes, burning with an intensity that stunned everyone present, were locked on one person, and one person only, James O'Donnell. He marched directly to the old man, his polished shoes making sharp, rhythmic clicks on the floor. He halted precisely 3 feet away, his body ramrod straight. He took a deep breath, and then he executed the sharpest, most respectful salute of his entire career. It was not the perfunctory gesture offered to a junior officer. It was the deep, profound acknowledgement a warrior gives to a living legend. "Mr. O'Donnell," the general's voice boomed, resonating with a power that filled every corner of the vast space. "It is an absolute honor, sir." He held the salute, his hand a rigid blade at his brow, his eyes never leaving James's. James, in turn, slowly, almost reluctantly, gave a small, tired nod of his head. It was the simple acknowledgement of a man long past the need for ceremony. Only then did the general drop his salute. He stood at ease, but the energy coming off him was anything but relaxed. He turned his head slightly, his gaze falling upon the petrified Captain Evans. Evans looked like he had been turned to stone. His mouth was slightly agape, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. The general turned to face the crowd, his voice taking on the quality of a lecturer at the War College. "For those of you who do not know," he began, his voice cold and clear, "let me provide some context." He didn't need notes. He spoke from a place of deeply ingrained reverence. During a conflict this nation has tried to forget, there were missions that never made the official records, missions deep in hostile territory, carried out by small, deniable units that didn't officially exist. These men were ghosts. They went where no one else could go and did what no one else would do. Their casualty rates were nearly 100%. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. These units didn't have official names. They had legends, and the most effective, the most feared, and the most decorated of these clandestine units was a 5-man team known in whispers as the Vipers. The general's eyes swiveled back to James. This man did not just serve in that unit. He created it. He led it. He was the only one to come home from it. He is a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross, 3 Silver Stars, and a Navy Cross that was awarded in a classified ceremony, so secret that the president himself wasn't there. The general took a step toward Evans, whose entire body had begun to tremble. His operational name, the name our enemies scrawled on intelligence briefings as their #1 target, the name that saved an entire battalion of Marines cut off in the Osho Valley, was Iron Viper.
A collective gasp went through the crowd. Phones, which had been discreetly lowered, were now raised openly, recording the public coronation of a humble king. Lily stared at her grandfather, tears streaming down her face, finally understanding the source of the quiet sadness and immense strength she had known her whole life. The general now focused the full, unbridled force of his fury on Captain Evans. It wasn't a shout. It was far more terrifying. It was a low, controlled, laser-focused demolition of a man's pride. "You, Captain," he hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Stand there in a uniform that men like this bled for. You wear the eagle, globe, and anchor that he honored in ways you can't even comprehend, and you used it to bully a man whose boots you are not worthy to shine." He stepped even closer until he was inches from Evans's face. "You mistook his humility for weakness. You mistook his dignity for confusion. You failed the most fundamental test of a Marine officer, to recognize greatness, especially when it stands before you without rank or fanfare. You will report to my office at 0600 tomorrow. You will surrender your command, and we will have a very long discussion about your future, or lack thereof, in my Marine Corps."
The rebuke was so complete, so utterly devastating, that a sympathetic cringe rippled through the onlookers. Just as the silence stretched to an unbearable length, James O'Donnell spoke again. He placed a gentle, wrinkled hand on the general's starched sleeve. "General," he said, his quiet voice cutting through the tension, "let the boy be." The general turned, his expression of fury softening instantly into one of difference. "Sir, we were all young once," James said, his gaze shifting to the broken Captain Evans. "We all thought we knew everything. The uniform is heavy, General. Sometimes it takes a while to learn how to carry it with grace." The wisdom in his words was simple and profound. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about understanding. It was a lesson from a man who had seen the worst of humanity and had chosen not to be defined by it. As James spoke, a final fleeting image surfaced. It was not of battle, but of its precursor. A young James O'Donnell, his face taut with the pressure of command, sat in a sweltering canvas tent lit by a single bare bulb. Across from him, a fellow soldier, a boy of no more than 19, was carefully hand-stitching the serpent and lightning bolt insignia onto James's jacket. "What should we call ourselves, Lieutenant?" the young soldier asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The Army brass. They just call us the Asset." Young James looked down at a map covered in red circles, each one a death trap. "They say we're supposed to strike from nowhere," he said, his voice low and determined, "with the speed of a thunderbolt and the venom of a snake. They won't see us coming." He tapped the patch. "We'll be the Vipers." The name wasn't born of bravado. It was a simple, grim statement of purpose, a promise of what they would become to survive. The fallout from the incident in the Grand Majestic lobby was both swift and far-reaching. The videos taken by onlookers went viral, though the general's office worked tirelessly to scrub James O'Donnell's name and face from the public clips, affording him the privacy he had earned 1,000 times over. Captain Evans was, as promised, relieved of his command. He wasn't discharged, but his reassignment was a lesson in humility. He was tasked with developing and personally leading a new command-wide training program focused on the history of special warfare units and the importance of showing respect to veterans of all eras. It was a penance designed to build, not just to punish. The Marine Corps issued a formal public apology, not to James by name, but to all veterans who had ever been made to feel unseen or unvalued. For James and Lily, life returned to its quiet rhythm. The ball had been wonderful, with the general personally escorting James as the night's true guest of honor, but the fanfare was not what James sought. He was happiest in the simple routines of his life. A few weeks later, he and Lily were sitting in their favorite corner booth at a local diner, a place with worn vinyl seats and the comforting smell of coffee and bacon. The small bell over the door jingled, and a young man in civilian clothes walked in. He stood uncertainly for a moment, scanning the room. It was Kyle Evans. He saw James and froze, his face a complex mixture of shame, fear, and something else, a deep, uncertain longing. He hesitated, clearly warring with himself before taking a tentative step toward their booth. Lily tensed, ready to defend her grandfather again, but James simply watched him approach, his expression unreadable. Evans stopped at their table, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He wouldn't meet James's eyes, focusing instead on the salt shaker. "Sir," he began, his voice rough and quiet. "Mr. O'Donnell, I just wanted to say—" He trailed off. The words of apology he had surely rehearsed 100 times, failing him. They were inadequate. James didn't press him. He didn't demand an apology. Instead, he looked at the young man who had tried to humiliate him and saw past the arrogance to the brokenness beneath. He simply gestured with his chin to the empty seat on the other side of the booth. "Sit down, son," James O'Donnell said, his voice calm and steady. "The coffee is good here. Tell me about yourself." The story of Iron Viper is a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear their greatness on their sleeves. The deepest valor is often the quietest. If you were moved by this story of courage and humility, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Military Stories for more stories that honor our nation's finest.